Hey everyone, it's Tryston from Twitter, Tryston Perry. I wanted to make a video, kind of exploring these ideas of failing when you're working on something, failures as a person, how your desire to build something can overshadow your own personal desires in life, and also can make you a different person, or at least bring out the worst parts of you. This is some stuff I learned about a startup that I recently had tried to start with a few friends. Kind of start from the beginning. Most of it I'm not going to go into detail into the actual idea or the startup. I mean, I'll go a little bit, but the points that I want to make are not really related to that. So back in about March of 2021, this year, a friend of mine that I had known on Twitter for a few months, named IJ, reached out to me, or no, he randomly posted in a Discord that I happened to be in, like, "Hey, does anyone know anyone that does video streaming technology?" And I saw that post and I was like, "Oh shit! Like, what are you guys doing?" And at the time, I had just finished working on a project for 2 years. In 2019, I started working on a project called PlaySpace, which was basically going to be a live streaming competitive site, or a live streaming site that was going to be a competitor to Twitch, focused more on real time experiences. And it was a really cool project, and I kept working on it from January 2019 till about sometime in 2020. And then I gave up on it because the technology stack was just way too much for one person. And then I saw that he needed help with this, and I was like, well, hey, I could be like I could be someone who's able to give them guidance of, like, this is the kind of technology you can use, this is where you could go, this is how you could kind of achieve what you want to do. So I thought I could kind of reach out and be helpful. And slowly, they told me what they were building. They told me they were going to basically build a web app that allowed for you to do basically host podcasts where you could have a bunch of people in their webcams, and it would automatically record and combine it into one stream that could be uploaded to YouTube and other platforms. And they wanted to make it so that way people could actually join in, so you could have the audience join in live on the podcast to answer questions and stuff like that. It was a really, really cool idea. And so I was like, wow, this is really sick. And I get addicted to new ideas. I get addicted to, like, ideas that push the boundaries. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so addicted to this new project that I'm working on, because it's pushing the boundaries of what's out there. And I think that's a really addicting feeling. And so I think I got a little too attached to that feeling, because I invested way too much of my time into this project. And slowly what I realized is there was only 3 of us on it. There was me, and I was the guy that, like, I was the only person on the team that had worked with video streaming technology, and so all that relied on me. And then there was another guy, IJ. He was kind of basically the main founder. I mean, we were all co-founders, but he was like the main guy that organized a lot of that stuff. Organized if we had to find other people to work on it, or in the product design, like the Figma sketches, and he did a ton of work into it. And then we had another guy who I won't mention, but he was someone who was a programmer, but he was relatively new to coding. He was still in college, and so I kind of threw myself at this project and didn't really realize what I was actually wanting was to just be helpful. And I wasn't vocal about that. I wasn't vocal that I didn't want to actually really help with code, because I didn't even really think about it. So I wasn't even, sometimes, we'll act a certain way just because it's what other people are picking up on. Like, I feel like the only real reason why I put myself out there so much is because I wanted to help, and I wanted to feel good about myself. I wanted, like, validation in a way. And so I put myself in a position where eventually I ended up working on a project I didn't even like, because it was not something I really should have been working on. And one of the things, like I mentioned, is that the other guy that was the other coder, there was only 2 coders, including me, and the other guy was just really inexperienced. And I don't blame him. Like, he was just a less experienced kind of coder. And so a lot of so I had to deal with the server infrastructure. Then I had to deal with the back-end security and doing user accounts and database management with all the information about a podcast being hosted or whatnot. And then I also had to create the front end and then also onboard this guy onto the project. And it was a lot for me. I'm not someone who handles a lot of stress and expectations very well. Usually nowadays I try to just ignore it and not give a fuck and just do what I think is right at my own pace. And I'm very happy with that. But this was such a big project that I felt like I had to really push myself. And one of the mistakes that I made was this guy was pretty new, but I felt that I was so stressed about all this stuff. I'm like, I need you to pick up some of the slack. I need you to do this. I need you to do more. And he was like, dude, I work a full-time job and I'm in school and I don't have that much time. And I'm still putting in some good time. He was still putting in some good time, but I kept pressuring him to hey man, you gotta do more. You gotta do more. I even did stupid shit oh my God, I'm working so hard that I'm working in my car while my mom was because I was driving my mom somewhere and she had to go do something, and so I was working in my car on my laptop, and I was even oh my God, I'm doing this, this is how devoted I am, kind of just trying to be hey man, can you squeeze in a little more productivity? And what I realized was that was really just a shitty thing to do or a shitty thing to say, and it was very indicative of the fact that I don't handle stress very well, and I a lot of times will become impatient and blame other people. And that was one of the biggest things I regret, was I felt like I treated him like he wasn't an equal, he wasn't a partner. He was someone I had to kind of carry on my back, so to speak, which was definitely not, you don't want that type of vibe at all in your life, especially if you're starting a startup or a company or anything. So that was a big thing for me. The next thing was just, it was too big of a goddamn idea. Sometimes you pick up an idea and it's just too fucking big. There was so much infrastructure going into that. It would have costed a lot of money to make it scalable. And then it's live. So if you have a 2-hour podcast and one thing fucks up, I mean, dude, I got to the point where I was just I was so overwhelmed with the amount of shit that I had to do to get right, that we had to get right, that I was just I didn't even know what to think. I didn't even know. It was so insane. It was scary, to be honest. Especially because we were going to get we had some pretty big people in the podcasting space that were signed up to we want to try this out. And so the people that I knew, I won't say who because I don't know if I can, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter, but it was fuck, dude, I don't want to look like an idiot in front of these people. And that's always it's a good sign that you're pushing yourself, but sometimes I feel like you could push yourself so far that it's just not realistic. You can't do everything. But yeah, one of the other things that was interesting to me was that I kind of jumped into this project without even really thinking about whether or not I wanted to work on it. Did I ever want to work on doing video streaming stuff again? After PlaySpace, I didn't. I basically said I will never touch any kind of video streaming technology ever again. WebRTC was the specific one. I will never do that. And I found myself dealing with the same thing, same technology, and even more technology, things like FFmpeg for recording, and trying to do transcoding from different types of video protocols, or just streaming protocols, and all this stuff that was just so fucking much. I mean, and at the time, me and my mom I was trying to help my mom sell her condo, and so I was doing all that, and it got to the point where I was just this is not what I want to be doing. This is too much. And the problem was that I had put myself in a position where I had put myself out there. I put myself out there as, hey, I could help out. Hey, I know video streaming technology. I could really help you guys get to at least to an MVP where you guys have something going. But then it became, with that, it's very hard to get someone who's doing video streaming to work for free. And I was working for free, basically. It's very hard to get someone to do that. So there was no way that they could find anyone else. And so as I started to become very this is overwhelming me, I don't even like the work anymore, all this stuff is all these negative feelings, and just the way I felt started to bubble up. It became a situation where I was the only one that was I was the glue of the project. The whole project became really dependent on, I was irreplaceable. And the problem with that is that if I wanted to leave before the MVP was done, which I did, and I eventually did do, the project wouldn't have gotten done. It would have just been indefinitely finished, basically. They would have had to find someone else, and finding someone else would have been near impossible. So they were just like, I told them, like, hey, man, is there any way I think I need to leave this project? And they kind of reeled me back in, and because they were like, hey, can you just make it to the MVP? And our MVP, we started in March, and our MVP was basically, we wanted to get it out by I think the start of June. And I was like, okay, maybe we could do that. And I tried to work for a little bit longer, and then it just got to the point where I was just so over it. There was so much more that needed to be done the last week, and it was so stressful for me. And we could have pushed the date back, like the MVP launch date back, but I was at the point where I was so burned out. I mean, I was working 40 hours a week on that thing, along with other stuff that I had to be doing, like my trading and whatnot, and another project that I was working on at the time. There was so much shit, and I was just like, I don't even like the work. The only reason why I'm doing it is because I feel like I made a promise to someone. And I don't, it's one thing to make a promise to someone, but it's another thing to do work that you actually don't want to do, and you actually start to resent. Like, I resented doing that work. I fucking hated it because it wasn't interesting to me anymore. It just felt like it was like a job. It felt like a contract that I just had to get to the end of, but there was no reward at the end of it because it was a startup, and most startups fail. So eventually I leave a few days before the MVP should have been done, and the whole project ends up just going on a hiatus and eventually falls apart. And me and IJ are still good friends. We talk all the time. Oh, not all the time, but we talk, and he's a good dude, So that ended up being fine. But the lessons I learned from that was that, going into that, I went in for the wrong reasons. I went into that project as like, hey, I could be helpful, but not putting up boundaries for myself, not realizing even I needed to put up boundaries, and also going into it because I felt like it was the thing for me to do. Like, oh yeah, startup culture, that'd be so cool. What if eventually we have an office? What if I miss having what I did was I missed having a project that really captivated me. I hadn't had a project that like I was obsessed with since PlaySpace ended when back in early 2020. Since that ended, I hadn't had a project that really made me obsessive, and I missed that. So in a way, I kind of saw this and was like, this could be my next thing, but I didn't realize I didn't like it, and then I basically took on all this load and let some people down. And yeah, and looking back, it was a good experience. I just wish I just won't do it again. There's no real regret. I don't think there's much I could have done better other than just having, not done the things that I did. And there's no better way I could have toned it down. I don't think working towards the MVP actually would have been the best thing, to be honest. But yeah, and I think my point of this video is that I just want people to understand my story and to understand that, like, people do fuck up. And, taking on a lot of load, if you're doing like a lot of work, or you're doing a startup, or you have people working, you're trying to be like a CTO position for other people or whatnot. There's always going to be a lot of stress on you, and that's something you're going to have to learn to kind of deal with. Like, no one's perfect, and it's sometimes you're going to find yourself in a position where it's not just the code that makes the job hard, it's actually also you and your stress and your impatience, and you'll start to see flaws within yourself, and I saw a lot of that with this. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else I wanted to say. I just wanted to talk a bit about that, and hopefully you got something from this. So yeah.